It was a cold, silent Christmas Eve, and the streets of the city were quiet except for the occasional car passing by. Snow had fallen lightly during the afternoon, leaving a soft white blanket over the sidewalks and streets. Most people were at home, preparing for the holiday, wrapping presents or sharing dinner with their families. But not everyone had a home to go to, and not everyone had someone to spend the night with. In a quiet corner of the city, a young girl and her mother were trying to survive the night. The girl was small, probably no older than 8, and she had long, tangled hair that fell over her face. Her cheeks were red from the cold, and her eyes, wide and tired, seemed to carry the weight of many difficult years. She held a small, worn-out toy in her hand, a little stuffed animal that had seen better days. It was her most treasured possession, the only thing that gave her comfort when the world felt too harsh. Her mother wrapped her in a thin blanket, but it did little to keep the biting winter wind away. The mother had a tired face, lined with worry and fatigue. She had been on the streets for weeks ever since she lost her job in the apartment they had lived in. She had tried everything, shelters, friends, and distant relatives, but no help had come. Each day was a struggle to find food, warmth, and safety for her daughter. She had to be strong for the girl, hiding her own fear and pain, but inside she felt helpless, wondering how she could keep going in a world that seemed to have forgotten them. As the girl shivered, the mother hugged her tightly, whispering words of comfort, even though she didn't fully believe them herself. "It's going to be okay," she said softly. "We'll find a safe place soon. Just hold on a little longer." The girl looked up at her mother with big, trusting eyes, and for a moment the mother felt a flicker of hope. She couldn't let herself break down in front of her daughter. Not yet. Meanwhile, across the city, a businessman was finishing his work. He was wealthy and successful, known for his sharp mind and careful decisions. But even he had been feeling something different this year. As Christmas approached, he thought about the people who were struggling, about those who wouldn't have the warmth of a home or a meal to enjoy. He had given to charity before, but somehow this year felt more personal. He wanted to do something real, something that could make a difference. He decided to take a drive through the city streets before heading home. The night was peaceful, and the snow gave everything a quiet beauty. He drove slowly, thinking about his life, his family, and the blessings he had. And then, as he turned a corner, he saw them. The girl and her mother were huddled on the cold sidewalk, wrapped in a thin blanket that offered little protection from the winter night. The mother held her daughter close, trying to shield her from the wind, but she was trembling, and so was the girl. The little stuffed animal in the girl's hand was almost frozen to her fingers. The sight struck him immediately. He had seen homelessness before, but this was different. This was a mother and daughter, alone on Christmas Eve, facing the bitter cold together. He stopped his car a few feet away, unsure what to do at first. Part of him wanted to drive past, thinking it wasn't his problem, that someone else might help them, but the sight of the little girl, shivering and clutching her toy, made him feel a sharp pang of guilt and sadness. He couldn't leave them there. He couldn't. He stepped out of the car, his heavy coat keeping him warm, and walked toward them slowly, not wanting to startle them. The mother looked up as he approached, her eyes wide and wary. Can I help you?" he asked gently, his voice calm and kind. The mother hesitated, unsure if he was serious. She had encountered strangers before, people who promised help and then disappeared, but there was something different in his tone, something sincere and real. "Yes, please," she whispered finally, her voice trembling. "We don't have anywhere to go tonight." The girl peeked out from behind her mother, her eyes still wide with fear, but there was a small glimmer of hope. The businessman nodded and offered his hand. "Come with me. I'll make sure you're safe." The mother looked at her daughter, silently asking for her opinion. The girl nodded slightly, her small hand reaching out to the businessman. They climbed into his car, the warmth from the heater slowly chasing away the cold that had seeped into their bones. The mother wrapped her arms around her daughter as they drove through the snowy streets, feeling a mixture of relief and disbelief. She couldn't believe this was happening. A stranger, someone with so much, was helping them. As they drove, the businessman asked them simple questions, careful not to overwhelm them. "Where are you from?" he asked softly. "How long have you been out here?" The mother hesitated, then shared bits of their story. She told him about losing her job, about the apartment that had been taken away, about the nights spent searching for food and shelter. She told him about her daughter, about how she tried to protect her from the harsh reality of life. The little girl stayed quiet at first, holding tightly onto her stuffed animal. But as the car moved through the quiet city, she slowly began to relax. There was something in the businessman's calm presence that made her feel safe, something she hadn't felt in a long time. She peeked up at him and he smiled gently as if to say, "You're safe now. I'm here for you." Finally, they arrived at his mansion. The house was large with lights twinkling on every window, a big tree glowing in the front yard, and a warm, welcoming aura that seemed to reach out to them. The mother and daughter stepped out of the car, their eyes wide with amazement. They had never seen anything like it. The snow crunched under their feet as they walked toward the door, still holding onto each other tightly. The businessman opened the door for them and led them inside. The warmth hit them immediately, washing away the chill that had settled in their bones. The smell of baked goods and a fire in the fireplace filled the air. The mother couldn't believe it. She looked at her daughter, whose eyes were wide with wonder. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, they felt safe. They felt hope. The girl's fingers relaxed around her stuffed toy and a small smile appeared on her lips. The mother's eyes filled with tears, but she blinked rapidly to keep them from falling. She felt a sense of relief she hadn't known in a long time. For now, the world felt a little brighter, a little kinder, and a little more like Christmas should feel. The businessman showed them around the house, making sure they felt comfortable and welcome. He introduced them to his staff, who treated them with respect and kindness. He offered them food and hot drinks, encouraging them to relax and enjoy themselves. The mother and daughter hesitated at first, still unsure if they truly belonged there, but his warmth and sincerity slowly melted away their doubts. As they sat by the fire sipping on hot chocolate, the mother whispered to her daughter, "See? Things can get better. We just have to believe." The girl nodded, her small hand resting on her mother's. For the first time in a long time, they both felt a spark of hope, a belief that life could change, even when it seemed impossible. Outside, the snow continued to fall softly, blanketing the city in white. Inside, a small family, rescued by the kindness of a stranger, began to experience the warmth and magic of Christmas in a way they had never known. It was just the beginning, a single night that would soon change their lives forever. The businessman watched them quietly, feeling a sense of peace. He knew that helping them for just one night wasn't enough, but he didn't want to rush. Tonight they needed warmth, safety, and hope, and as he looked at the mother and daughter, he realized that giving them even this small comfort was a gift he would never forget. That night, the cold city streets held many stories of struggle and hardship, but inside that warm mansion, a mother and daughter found something they hadn't felt in a long time: hope, safety, and a reminder that kindness still existed in the world. And for them, Christmas Eve had become more than just a night on the calendar. It had become the start of something new, a chance for their lives to change in ways they had never dreamed possible. The mother and daughter spent the first few minutes inside the mansion quietly, taking in everything around them. The warmth from the fireplace felt like a soft embrace after the harsh cold of the streets. The mother still held her daughter close, making sure she felt safe, but she allowed herself to breathe more freely now that they were inside. The little girl let go of her tight grip on her stuffed toy, placing it carefully beside her, as if it too wanted to enjoy the warmth of the room. The businessman could see the mixture of awe and hesitation on their faces. He smiled gently, trying not to overwhelm them. "You don't have to worry about anything tonight," he said softly. "Just relax. You're safe here." His words were simple, but they carried weight. They weren't just promises, they felt real, honest, and full of care. The mother nodded slowly, her eyes moist, but she tried to keep her composure for her daughter. He led them into a large sitting room, where a Christmas tree stood in the corner, decorated with shining lights, ornaments, and ribbons. Gifts were stacked neatly underneath, each one carefully wrapped. The girl's eyes widened and she stepped closer to the tree, her little hands reaching out to touch a shiny ornament. The mother knelt beside her, smiling softly. She didn't remember the last time she had seen a Christmas tree, let alone one like this. "Do you want to sit by the fire for a bit?" the businessman asked. "I can bring some hot chocolate for both of you." The girl nodded eagerly and the mother agreed. They settled into 2 plush chairs in front of the fire, and soon the warm mugs were placed gently in their hands. The first sip of the hot chocolate brought a small, surprised smile to the girl's face. It was rich and sweet, and the warmth spread through her chest, chasing away some of the fear and exhaustion she had carried for so long. As they sipped their drinks, the mother began to feel more comfortable sharing their story. She spoke in low, careful tones, afraid of being judged, but the businessman listened attentively, never interrupting. She told him about how they had lived in a small apartment until a sudden job loss forced them out. She spoke about the nights spent on the streets, the struggles to find food, and the fear of being alone in the city at night. She admitted how much she had worried about her daughter, trying to shield her from the harsh reality while feeling helpless herself. The businessman didn't offer advice or judgment. He simply listened, nodding, showing through his silence that he understood. His calm presence allowed the mother to speak freely, to unload the burden she had carried silently for so long. And the girl, listening quietly, began to realize that for the first time in her life, someone genuinely cared about them, not as a charity case, but as real human beings deserving of warmth, safety, and kindness. After some time, the businessman suggested they have dinner together. "We'll have a small meal," he said gently. "Nothing fancy, just something warm to fill your stomachs tonight." The mother looked around, unsure what to expect. She had grown accustomed to simple meals or worse, nights with no food at all. The girl held her mother's hand tightly, sensing the excitement and fear all at once. They followed him to a dining room that was both elegant and cozy. The table was set with plates, glasses, and cutlery, but it didn't feel intimidating. The businessman had made sure that it was welcoming, not formal or unapproachable. He had prepared a simple yet hearty meal: roasted vegetables, warm bread, soup, and a small dessert. It was not just about filling their stomachs. It was about creating a sense of normalcy, of comfort and dignity. As they ate, the conversation flowed gently. The businessman asked them about their favorite foods, their hobbies, and small details of their lives. The mother spoke softly, sometimes glancing at her daughter, who listened shyly but was slowly opening up. The girl mentioned her love for drawing, for making little stories with her stuffed animal as the main character. The businessman smiled warmly and encouraged her to show him one of her drawings sometime. He wanted her to feel that her creativity, her imagination, and her personality mattered. After dinner, they returned to the sitting room, where the fire crackled and the tree lights twinkled. The businessman suggested they look at some of the gifts under the tree. "You don't have to take anything," he said, "but if you see something you like, you can choose one." The mother hesitated, unsure if it was appropriate, but the girl's eyes lit up with excitement. She slowly picked a small box, wrapped in red paper with a golden ribbon. When she opened it, she found a set of colored pencils and a sketchbook perfect for her drawings. Her face lit up with joy, and she hugged the gift tightly, unable to contain her smile. The mother couldn't hold back tears. She touched her daughter's cheek gently, whispering, "You deserve this." It was the first time in weeks that they had experienced such a simple moment of happiness. The mother's heart swelled with gratitude, not just for the gift, but for the feeling that someone had seen them, cared for them, and treated them as if their lives mattered. The businessman noticed her tears and spoke softly. "You don't have to thank me. Tonight is about giving you a moment of peace, a moment of hope. That's all I want." His words were simple, but they carried a deep sincerity. The mother looked at him and nodded, understanding that this was more than just generosity. It was genuine care, a desire to make a real difference in their lives. As the night went on, the businessman took them on a short tour of his home. He showed them the living areas, the small library filled with books, and a cozy room with soft blankets and pillows. He wanted them to feel comfortable, to see that this space was theirs for the evening. The girl explored slowly, touching the furniture with awe but always returning to her mother's side. The mother followed her quietly, feeling a sense of calm that had been missing for so long. After the tour, they returned to the sitting room, where the fire had dimmed slightly, casting a warm glow. The businessman offered blankets and suggested they rest for a while. The mother nodded, and the girl climbed into a soft armchair, pulling the blanket around herself. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, she felt safe enough to relax completely. She hugged her stuffed toy, but this time with a sense of comfort, not fear. The mother sat beside her, holding her daughter's hand, and allowed herself a moment of quiet reflection. She thought about the long nights on the streets, the fear of not knowing where they would sleep, the hunger and the cold, and now here they were in a warm home, treated with kindness and respect, sharing a moment of peace that she had thought might never come. She felt a flicker of hope, a tiny flame but strong enough to remind her that life could change. The businessman watched them quietly, giving them space, but his mind was already thinking ahead. He knew that tonight was just the beginning. They needed more than a warm meal and a safe place to sleep. They needed stability, security, and the chance to rebuild their lives. But he didn't want to rush. For now, he wanted them to experience something they had never felt before: safety, comfort, and hope. As the night grew deeper, snow continued to fall outside, covering the streets with a fresh layer of white. The city seemed quiet, almost magical, and inside the mansion, a small family felt the warmth and care of a stranger who had chosen to make a difference in their lives. The little girl finally closed her eyes, resting her head against her mother, who held her close. For the first time in a long time, she felt truly safe, truly cared for, and truly loved. The mother, watching her daughter sleep, felt tears welling up in her eyes. She whispered a quiet "thank you" to the businessman, though he was across the room giving them space. His kindness had given them more than warmth. It had given them hope. And hope, she realized, was the most precious gift of all. That Christmas Eve, the mother and daughter discovered something they hadn't experienced in a long time: a sense of belonging, a sense of being seen and valued, and a sense that even in the darkest moments, kindness could shine through. It was a night that would stay with them forever. A night when a stranger's compassion reminded them that life could change in the most unexpected ways. And though the businessman knew that tomorrow would bring challenges, he also knew that tonight had planted a seed of hope, of trust, and of a new beginning. This was the first step in a journey that would transform their lives, a journey that would prove that even the smallest act of kindness could create a ripple that changed everything. The night deepened outside the mansion, and the snow continued to fall softly, covering the streets in a thick, quiet blanket. Inside, the warmth from the fireplace spread through the rooms, filling the air with comfort and calm. The mother and daughter sat together, still trying to take in everything around them. It all felt like a dream, so different from the cold streets, the hunger, and the fear they had experienced for so long. The little girl had set aside her stuffed toy for a moment and was now examining the Christmas tree again, her eyes wide with fascination. The ornament sparkled in the light, and the gentle flicker of the fireplace made the colors dance across the walls. She reached out to touch a shiny silver ornament, her fingers brushing it carefully. Her mother smiled softly at her daughter, happy to see her eyes filled with wonder instead of fear. The businessman noticed their amazement and decided to give them a small surprise. "There's a special corner of the house I'd like to show you," he said gently. The mother looked up, curious, while the girl's eyes sparkled with anticipation. He led them down a hallway lined with paintings and family photos. Each picture told a story, and the mother and daughter felt a quiet sense of respect for the space they were entering. They arrived at a room that was warm, cozy, and inviting. In the center, a small table was set with cookies, milk, and a few other treats. The room smelled sweet, like cinnamon and chocolate, and soft music played in the background. The girl gasped softly, taking in the sight. She had never experienced anything like this. She stepped closer to the table, looking at the carefully arranged cookies and the little glass of milk. The businessman smiled, watching her quietly. "You can have as many as you like," he said gently. "Everything here is for you tonight." The girl's face lit up, and she picked up a cookie, taking a small, careful bite. Her eyes widened in delight at the sweetness, and she quickly reached for another. The mother joined her, smiling softly as she enjoyed the treat. For a moment, there was nothing but warmth, safety, and simple happiness. After a while, the businessman brought out a small gift for the mother. It was a scarf, soft and warm, with colors that reminded her of the winter sky. She hesitated at first, unsure if she should accept it, but then she took it in her hands, feeling the softness against her fingers. Tears filled her eyes, and she smiled, overwhelmed by the kindness of a stranger who had taken the time to care for them. The girl watched her mother's reaction, her own eyes shining. She wanted to show her gratitude too, so she hugged the businessman tightly, a gesture of pure, innocent thanks. He laughed softly, gently patting her back. "You don't have to thank me," he said. "Tonight is for you. Just enjoy it." The girl released her hug, Her smile bright and genuine, and returned to the table, enjoying another cookie. The mother and daughter spent the next few hours in the room, exploring, laughing softly, and sharing quiet conversations. They talked about small dreams and wishes, things that had seemed impossible when they were living on the streets. The little girl spoke about wanting to go to school regularly, to draw every day, and to have a warm bed of her own. The mother shared her hopes too, about finding a steady job, a safe place to live, and giving her daughter a life where she wouldn't have to worry about hunger or cold. The businessman listened carefully, nodding and offering gentle encouragement. He didn't interrupt or rush them. He understood that tonight was not just about comfort. It was about hope, about letting them feel that their dreams mattered, that their lives had value, and that there was a path forward. He wanted them to see that the world could be kind, that it could offer more than hardship and struggle. As the evening went on, the businessman suggested they take a short walk around the mansion. The snow had settled, glistening under the outdoor lights, creating a magical scene. The mother and daughter stepped carefully onto the walkway, holding hands, marveling at the sparkling snow. The girl twirled slowly, letting the snowflakes fall on her face, laughing softly. Her laughter was a sound the mother had not heard in weeks, a sound that brought tears of joy to her eyes. They walked slowly, enjoying the crisp winter air, the quiet night, and the feeling of safety. The mother realized that this was a night she would never forget. The fear, the hunger, and the cold were far behind them now. Instead, there was warmth, laughter, and a sense of wonder she had not felt in years. The little girl stopped to make a small snowball, her hands clumsily shaping it, and then she gently tossed it toward her mother, who caught it with a laugh. For a moment, they were simply mother and daughter, playing and enjoying life as it should be. When they returned inside, the businessman led them to the living room again, where the fire had burned down to glowing embers. He had prepared a small corner with blankets, pillows, and a soft rug for the little girl to sleep on. The mother hesitated, not wanting her daughter to feel like she was alone, but the businessman insisted softly, arranging the blankets so they could sleep together comfortably. The girl hugged her stuffed animal, curling up beside her mother, and finally, for the first time in a long time, she felt truly safe. The mother lay beside her daughter, holding her close and feeling the warmth of the blankets, the fire, and the room. She whispered softly to her daughter, "Sleep well. Tomorrow will be a new day." The little girl nodded, her eyes closing slowly, and soon she was breathing softly in peaceful sleep. The mother felt a sense of calm that she had not known for months. She knew that tonight had been a turning point, a moment when kindness had touched their lives and given them hope for the future. The businessman watched quietly from across the room, making sure they were comfortable, and then he left them alone to rest. He understood that the night had already given them more than they had hoped for, a sense of safety, a sense of joy, and a sense of possibility. But he also knew that this was only the beginning. Tomorrow he would help them take steps to rebuild their lives, to find stability and security. But for now, he allowed them this night, this Christmas miracle, to simply enjoy. Hours passed, and the mansion grew silent except for the crackle of the fire and the gentle breathing of mother and daughter. Outside, the snow continued to fall, covering the city in a quiet, peaceful blanket. Inside, the mother dreamed of the future she hoped to create for her daughter. She imagined a life where fear, hunger, and cold were no longer constant companions. She imagined a daughter growing up with opportunities she had never had. And for the first time in a long time, she felt that such a life was possible. The little girl dreamed too, clutching her stuffed animal, imagining a world filled with warmth, laughter, and safety. She dreamed of going to school, making friends, and drawing pictures that could one day fill a room with color and imagination. In her dreams, the streets were far away, replaced by cozy rooms, bright lights, and the gentle kindness of a stranger who had shown her that life could be full of hope. When the morning light finally began to filter through the windows, the mother and daughter awoke feeling rested, safe, and cared for. The businessman was already awake, preparing a simple breakfast for them. He greeted them with a warm smile, encouraging them to enjoy the meal. For a moment, they forgot the hardships they had faced, focusing instead on the simple joy of warm food, a bright room, and the sense of security they now had. As they ate, the mother realized that this night had changed everything. The fear and uncertainty that had dominated their lives had been replaced by warmth and hope. She looked at her daughter, whose eyes sparkled with excitement, and she felt a deep sense of gratitude, not just for the comfort, but for the reminder that people could care, that life could change, and that even in the darkest moments, kindness could shine through. The businessman watched them quietly, feeling a sense of fulfillment. He knew that this night had already made a difference, and he was determined to help them further. But he also understood that the most important thing was for them to feel that their lives had value, that they could dream, and that they could hope. Tonight had given them that gift, and that gift was priceless. The mother and daughter spent the morning exploring the mansion, talking softly, and enjoying the warmth. They laughed together, shared small stories, and began to imagine a future that had once seemed impossible. And in the quiet moments, they realized that this Christmas Eve had given them more than warmth or food. It had given them hope, joy, and the beginning of a new chapter in their lives. It was a Christmas miracle, not just in the presents or the food, but in the way a simple act of kindness had opened the door to a brighter, more hopeful future. And as mother and daughter embraced, smiling and laughing softly, they knew that their lives had already begun to change in ways they had never dreamed possible. After the warmth of that first night, the mother and daughter woke feeling rested, safe, and cautiously hopeful. The cold streets and hunger that had haunted them for months seemed like a distant memory, almost unreal. Yet the mother knew that the real challenges were only just beginning. They had been given a night of safety and comfort, but now they needed something more lasting: security, stability, and a way to rebuild their lives. The businessman understood this too. He had invited them into his home for one night, but he couldn't ignore the bigger picture. After breakfast, he spoke gently with the mother, asking about her skills, work experience, and the kind of job she might be able to do if given the opportunity. She was hesitant at first, not used to talking about herself in a positive light, but slowly she shared that she had once worked in a small store, helping with customer service and managing inventory. She also mentioned that she was a quick learner and willing to do anything to provide for her daughter. The businessman listened carefully and nodded. "I think we can find something for you," he said warmly. "I want to make sure you have a stable income and a safe place to live. We'll take it step by step, and I'll be here to help along the way." The mother felt a mix of relief and disbelief. She had spent weeks wondering how she would survive, and now someone was offering a real solution, not just temporary comfort. She looked at her daughter, who was quietly observing the conversation, and felt a renewed sense of hope. The businessman arranged for a small apartment close to the city, comfortable enough for both of them. It was modest, but clean, warm, and safe, a place they could finally call home. The mother walked through the rooms with her daughter, touching the walls and furniture as if trying to make sure it was real. The little girl ran from room to room, laughing softly, her excitement contagious. For the first time in months, they could imagine life without fear. Once they were settled in their new apartment, the businessman helped the mother look for work. He contacted a few acquaintances and recommended her for positions in stores, offices, and small businesses where she could use her skills. He emphasized her dedication, honesty, and willingness to learn, qualities that she sometimes doubted about herself. Within a few days, she was offered a part-time job at a small retail store. The work was steady, the hours manageable, and it provided just enough income to support their new home. She felt a sense of pride and accomplishment she had not felt in years. Meanwhile, the little girl was also experiencing a new kind of life. The businessman had arranged for her to enroll in a local school with a supportive environment. On her first day, she walked nervously into the classroom, clutching her backpack tightly. But the teacher greeted her with warmth and kindness, and the other children welcomed her gently. She found a place where she could learn, grow, and be herself without fear. For the first time, she could imagine a future where education and opportunity were possible. The mother often watched her daughter at school, marveling at how quickly she adapted. She would sit quietly in the apartment, sipping tea, feeling a mix of relief and gratitude. The nights of wandering the streets and wondering where they would sleep felt like a distant nightmare. Now each day brought progress, stability, and hope. She also realized that this was not just about survival anymore. It was about building a life where her daughter could thrive. As the weeks passed, the businessmen continued to check in on them, offering guidance and support without intruding. He encouraged the mother to save a small portion of her earnings, explaining that even modest savings could provide security in the future. He also arranged for tutoring sessions for the little girl, helping her catch up in subjects she had missed while living on the streets. Slowly but surely, their lives began to take shape, moving from chaos and fear to structure and possibility. One afternoon, the mother received a call from the businessman. He invited them to the mansion again, not for another overnight stay, but for a small celebration of their progress. The little girl was excited, imagining the decorations, the warmth, and maybe even a small gift. When they arrived, the businessman greeted them with a smile and a simple message. "I wanted to show you that the hard work you're doing is paying off, and that there's more good waiting for you." He led them to a room filled with books, games, and art supplies. "I thought it would be nice for you to have a space to play, learn, and create," he said, looking at the girl. Her eyes lit up as she explored the shelves, picking up books and coloring supplies with awe. She sat down on a soft rug and began drawing, completely absorbed. The mother watched, feeling a mixture of joy and relief. Her daughter was safe, happy, and finally free to be a child. The businessman also spoke with the mother privately, offering advice on managing her new job, handling finances, and setting goals for the future. He reminded her that she had already overcome so much and that she was capable of providing a stable and loving environment for her daughter. He encouraged her to believe in herself, reinforcing the idea that their past struggles did not define them. They were capable of creating a better life. Over the next few months, their routine became more stable. The mother went to work, learning new skills and gaining confidence in her abilities. The little girl attended school regularly, made friends, and grew more confident each day. They cooked meals together in their small apartment, laughed, and shared stories about their day. For the first time, life felt predictable in a comforting way. The fear of losing everything overnight no longer haunted them. Evenings became a time of bonding. The mother and daughter would sit together, talking softly about their dreams, reading stories, or drawing. They began to plan small goals for the future, saving for a new bed, buying books for school, or even taking a short trip to the park on weekends. Each small accomplishment strengthened their confidence, and they realized that they were capable of shaping their own lives. The businessman continued to offer support in subtle ways, respecting their independence while providing guidance. He helped the mother set up a savings account, assisted with school supplies for the little girl, and occasionally invited them for small gatherings at his home. These visits were not about charity, they were about building trust, friendship, and a sense of community. The mother realized that kindness could be consistent, reliable, and genuine, not just a temporary relief from hardship. One evening, as they returned from one of these visits, the little girl said softly, "Mom, I think we're going to be okay now." The mother hugged her tightly, tears in her eyes, and whispered back, "Yes, my love, we are going to be okay." It was a statement that felt true in every sense. The fear and uncertainty that had dominated their lives were slowly being replaced by stability, confidence, and the knowledge that they could face the future together. The mother also began to notice changes in herself. She felt stronger, more capable, and more hopeful than she had in years. She realized that her struggles had not broken her. They had taught her resilience, determination, and the value of small acts of kindness. She began to dream bigger for her daughter, imagining opportunities, adventures, and experiences that had once seemed impossible. And she knew that these dreams were not just fantasies. They were achievable with hard work, support, and perseverance. As the seasons changed and Christmas approached again, the mother and daughter reflected on the year that had passed. They had moved from fear, hunger, and uncertainty to warmth, stability, and hope. The little girl had flourished at school, learning new things, making friends, and discovering her talents. The mother had gained confidence in her work, saving money, and feeling capable of providing for her daughter in a way she never had before. The businessman continued to check in occasionally, always offering guidance and encouragement. But the mother and daughter had grown more independent, more confident, and more capable of navigating life on their own. They realized that the kindness they had received was not just a one-time miracle, it had been a catalyst, showing them that with support and opportunity, their lives could change in lasting ways. By the time the next Christmas arrived, the mother and daughter had fully settled into their new life. They decorated their small apartment with lights and ornaments, creating a cozy, joyful atmosphere. The little girl proudly showed her artwork on the walls, and the mother prepared a small meal to celebrate. It was not as grand as the mansion, but it was theirs, and that made it perfect. The businessman visited briefly on Christmas Eve, smiling warmly at the transformation he had witnessed. He saw a mother and daughter who were thriving, happy, and full of hope. He realized that what had begun as a single act of kindness had grown into something far greater, a lasting change, a family empowered, and lives renewed. For the mother and daughter, this year had been a journey from despair to hope. They had learned that even in the darkest times, people could care, opportunities could arise, and life could change in ways that seemed impossible. They had discovered resilience, love, and the power of small steps toward a brighter future, and they knew in their hearts that their story was just beginning.